right. We are live. And we had one suggestion from the Discord this week. So let's start working on that. I guess it was for a case file, but still. Let's see. Yes, a colorless creature with Intimidate and an activated ability to change its color. Hey, MacMoose, how you doing? Don't think Chameleon is a creature type, so we'll have to go with like that. And then it would have Intimidate. And I'm doing pretty well. In the middle of making my second coffee. Excellent. Well, I don't really drink coffee because caffeine doesn't really wake me up. But I did go to bed early last night, and that actually worked wonders. So maybe I need to do that a bit more often. I'm not sure how you would word this. Hello, Najugo. Is 1 a.m. early? I went to bed early if it is. It really depends on who you are. I usually stay up till 2, well, I usually turn the lights out at 2 a.m. and get to sleep at like 2:30. Just scrolling on my phone or whatever. But that's just because, like, my last job, I was always up until 1 a.m. working, and then I needed some time to myself afterward. So I'm trying to scale it back and get back to, like, a more normal person schedule. So I went to bed at midnight last night and got off my phone at around, like, 12:30. So it was early for me, about 2 hours early. I apologize, but I will have to eat dinner on stream, so I'll try and keep the chewing noises to a minimum because I hate that. So yeah, I'm not sure how to word this ability. The idea being that you can... I was thinking if you can just like turn it into any color that you want, that might be a little strong. I guess it's just an unblockable creature at that point, as long as you activate it. But I thought it might be interesting to have it become the colors of mana that you actually spend. So you could make it unblockable by more things if you have more different colors of mana that you could activate it with. You don't see why what? Why you would make it become any color if it's already colorless. I guess it has Intimidate, but it's already colorless. This creature can't be blocked except by artifact. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that was the... I was just following the original idea, the prompt in the Discord. But you're right. It doesn't make sense. a good point. So then it needs to like be all colors, unless you activate it. Is there an anti-intimidate, like it not being blocked by creatures that share a color with it? Oh. That'd be interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a keyword, but yeah, that works. So 3/2 for 3, which is like, you know, it's honestly about what you get for a colorless card. And then so it's a little bit better that you could just spend 1 mana to make it the color of your choice until end of turn. Well, sort of. That's kind of cool. It's a fun design. Yeah. And then, of course, if you are running it, it'll like encourage having a way to splash for another color. You know, maybe putting in a land that can tap for any color of mana, or with our warped landscape, you know, which can fetch any color land. Maybe you just like put in one of each. It may not be worth it for just this card, but just encouraging different ways to get access to any color of mana. Another fatal flaw. Can't be blocked by creatures. Colorless creatures can block it. Ooh. Which is all face down creatures. That's a good point. Colorless is not a color. Yeah, currently in Najuga I changed it, so now it can't be blocked by creatures that share a color with it. So that way you're changing it to exactly the color that you're trying to get through. But that means that, yeah, the morph creatures are going to still be able to block it. That's a good point. We could make it a 4-drop and a 3/3. And that way it at least doesn't die to the morphs. Yeah, that's true. Could do that as well. Or 3 mana 2/3. That would work as well. Oops. Yeah, I don't know. This is it's interesting. It felt like a very simple idea when it was suggested, but it feels like it's gonna require a bit more work to develop. But we can always come back to it later, think on it. Right now that we have some people here, do we want to... Yeah, not as straightforward, but still like a cool design. So I think we can make it work. It's just gonna take some work. Do we want to move on to trying to finish the last Planeswalker from last week? Or do we want to wait and see if more people show up before we tackle that problem? about to go get food, but we'll listen in car either way. Excellent. I brought several different ideas. I have a favorite, so assuming that other people have brought ideas, I can just propose that one. Or I can fill in the gaps if we need more options to select from. Not having ideas didn't get us very far last time. Yeah, the problem was that we had ideas, but not, like... I didn't feel like we had a good cohesive Planeswalker where all the abilities work together. And so I've created a few here. Let me go find them, actually. I'll just... All right. So... Yeah, sounds good. We don't necessarily have to go exactly with what with any of my ideas. If it sparks your own ideas, that's cool too. So here's my favorite one that I designed, which is its first ability is a static, where whenever a creature deals combat damage to Gloom, I've decided to go with the basically this person is now a shadow. So I've named them Gloom. So whenever a creature deals combat damage to them, they gain all abilities and names of that creature. It's weird. It doesn't necessarily do anything by itself, and it's up to your opponents. So that part's not like necessarily like it's interesting, but it's not like the main thing. The main thing would be you may have Gloom become a 4/3 shade creature that can't be blocked until end of turn. The idea being it needs to be able to turn into a creature if it's gaining abilities of creatures, because a lot of abilities will not work unless they're on a creature. So it can turn into a creature for its +1 and then -4. As with many 5-mana black planeswalkers, you get to just destroy a creature, but with the upside that if it shares a name with Gloom, you draw 3 cards. So, hello Defiant Mars, how you doing? Yeah, I thought the multiple stealing names thing was kind of out there and weird, which I mean, a lot of our splashy cards we want to have be weird, I think. So that was my idea for this one. Are you able to tap a planeswalker for an ability? Yes, you sure can. And in fact, you can. They don't have summoning sickness, unless of course you turn it into a creature. So if it were to somehow gain an ability on your first turn, you'd be able to use it then too. I appreciate that can't be blocked, but I do think it should get hexproof or some other protection when it creaturefies. I hear that. It's definitely vulnerable. So it's vulnerable to damage. I mean, all planeswalkers are. But it's also vulnerable just to creature kill spells that couldn't normally hit planeswalkers. So that's definitely a potential issue. I mean, on the other hand, you don't want planeswalkers to be too hard to answer because they are planeswalkers and they tend to run away with games. So, I'm not sure. Have you checked if having multiple names is a thing that a Magic card can do? It sure can, and yeah, Nijugo points out the same card I was going to, which is Spy Kit. It's not been done, but technically possible to tap a walker. Yes. Yeah, I actually hadn't really thought about using, actually putting tap abilities on a planeswalker. That would be an interesting idea. But you could do it. And if this gains a tap ability, you could just use that every turn. This barely defends itself. Yes, it does barely defend itself. That's true. Because if it comes down, I mean, we can adjust numbers, right? We can make it more expensive and come down with more loyalty, or we can cheapen this to be 3 so it does defend itself on the first turn, by killing a creature that would come and try to kill it. It also pseudo-defends itself by discouraging people from attacking it. Because if they can't kill it flat out, they kind of don't want to hit it at all. So I think it's probably okay on that front, but we could definitely adjust numbers if people want. Planeswalker Mana Rock, I've never thought of that before. Yeah, me neither. I haven't really thought about it. I was thinking about it earlier when I had a version of Gloom that could just at will become a copy of another thing, and I was like, oh, that would be interesting. Yeah, if it could become a land, then tap for mana. But yeah, actually, just putting a tap ability on a Planeswalker would be interesting. I just like Planeswalkers that are more build around and less pure value engines. I agree with that. I, in general, like Mythics being more interesting build arounds and less just the best card. Passive ability could potentially be a bit of a rules nightmare too. Yes, that is actually my main concern with the card, is remembering what it has. You could like put a counter on a thing, and then it has all abilities of things with counters, but we already have a Planeswalker that puts counters on things, and we don't want to have too many cards that need a bunch of tracking. But not actually putting counters on this doesn't reduce the amount of tracking it requires. So that is definitely the potential issue. Did you see my strange, not very blue suggestion up above? Let me see. Sorry. I did not make moose. Why don't you have it say, must be blocked instead of can't? That would trigger the static. Might not really be blue-black, though, I guess. That's a good idea. It's not as blue-black. What is it? Must be blocked is green? I think it's green. Okay, there is one black card that does it. It's not really enough precedent, probably. But yeah, otherwise it's very green and a tiny bit red. Yeah, that would be interesting. Definitely a good idea. So if we don't go with this idea, we can maybe put that on a different Planeswalker at some point. Anyhow, that's my first idea. Let me see. Yes. This one is... Its static is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. +1, target creature can't be blocked this turn, and -3, until end of turn, you may play cards exiled with Gloom, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. So this one I feel like is a lot less of a rules nightmare. And yeah, Nijugo, it's very like Ashiok, and that's actually why I'm less interested in doing it, because I like to try and make all Planeswalkers as unique as possible. Obviously, there's not like enough design space where once you get into hundreds of Planeswalkers, clearly there's going to be some duplicates. But this one feels very like Ashiok, so I'm not as sure about doing this one. Basically, rogue class the Planeswalker. Let me see. Rogue class. Okay, forget about this one. It is basically exactly rogue class the Planeswalker, which I did not realize when I made it. So, well, let's just skip right past that one. Let's see. This one's not like super cohesive, but it was my take on one that enters with loyalty equal to your research counters. The idea being, if you have enough research, the amount of times that happens is shocking. Yeah, and like I've seen the card before, Rogue Class. I think I maybe even had it in a deck once, but I did not really remember what the card did. So it was definitely, maybe I based it off that subconsciously. But yeah, so basic idea here is that it's possible that your Planeswalker comes down and is able to ult immediately if you have enough research counters. So what I came up with is you get an emblem with whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, create a token that's a copy of it. So that just clones all creatures It's a little less black. Actually, it's not really at all black. So do with that what you want. Actually, this is like completely blue. But this was just supposed to be like a different kind of like kill, so we could just say destroy target creature if we wanted to make it black. Or we could come up with a more interesting ability. And then I'm not like I said, these this one was not very well done. Really those two could be whatever. The basic idea was something along these lines. Video is down for Mechmoose. Okay, good. I feel like the ult on this, I like the ult on this, I think that one feels very original and unique. Fits a bit with a bit of an espionage theme, I think. Yeah, so I guess the basic flavor concept was the whole point of the organization is they're trying to, yes, contain threats to the world, but also to study and be able to replicate those threats' abilities. And so the idea here is that if they have enough research, they can replicate anything. And so that's the idea. And then, yeah, these two, I was just trying to come up with some, like, bluish ability, blue and black abilities. So they could be whatever, they could change. Do I have anything else? This copies undercover creatures since they're non-token, which I find hilarious. Oh, you're right. It sure does. So it'll just make like a 2/2 token that's colorless, but obviously you can't turn it face up. And they won't have undercover because they don't have a front face. Interesting. Definitely an important interaction to be aware of. All right. This one is whenever Gloom is dealt damage, you draw that many cards. So I just basically decided, you know, its protection is that it keeps, like, if it dies, you get to draw a bunch. So, and then this was sort of like a proto of the first one that I did. So it has like the ability to just at will gain all abilities and names of target permanent. We could change that until end of turn. Actually, it would have to be until the end of your next turn if we want it to work with the third ability. And then just the -3 is destroy a permanent that shares a name with Gloom. So you wouldn't be able to activate this immediately. You would have to just like plus it to gain abilities and stuff. I know I was thinking of a possibility that could be like whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get a research counter. Giving you more research is definitely an option. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it because like I don't want to make research too easy to get, but this is just like a single planeswalker, and the way you've suggested it is, you know, even more restrictive. You have to actually hit an opponent, so that might be okay. Okay, Multiloquent votes for the one that makes copies of creatures. Seems like a really slow and harder to cast removal spell. It sure is, but don't forget, if they hit it, like, it's also effectively kind of a clone. And if they kill it, you get to draw a bunch. So I wouldn't want to... I think it would be a disservice to call it just a harder to cast removal spell. But if that's how you want to use it, yes, that is what it is. +2 Surveil 2 for the research one. Yeah, Shadow Wolf, that is a good suggestion. Surveil is very much in blue-black in the organization's wheelhouse. The reason I stayed away from that on this design is because we did end up putting Surveil 2 on our black-green Planeswalker, which is maybe not as flavorful, but it does work with the design of the card. Should a Dimir card be able to destroy any permanent too? No. The exception to the rule here is artifacts. That's the main type that Dimir cannot destroy. They also generally... Well, blue can't really destroy almost anything, but black can destroy anything except for artifacts, and it tends to have a downside on destroying enchantments now. That's a recent development. So, you're right. That's questionable. Shadowwolf says, maybe Cyber 5's idea, but it's a... minus. Ah, gotcha. I thought you were just like cutting off and not finishing your sentence. And lands. Yeah, targeting lands was my thought. Actually, black does get to destroy lands. It doesn't do it as much anymore, but, I mean, there were a lot of sets, even in the somewhat recent past, where black would get commons that destroyed lands. So... that part is actually okay, believe it or not. Plus, I figured at this rate, you're really not destroying many things with it. You'd be lucky to get to 2. So, it's not going to be like easily repeatable land destruction. Oh, the fact that it turns into one. Turning into a land is definitely a bit less blue-black. I don't think it would be a break, but definitely a bend. So, yeah, this one is not perfect. Now, Najugo says that he's not a fan of any of these, which is fine. Do you have a suggestion that you have brought, Najugo? If so, I would love to take a look at it. Okay, in that case, we will at least for now have to either design a new one right now or just pick one of the current ones that I have. It just seems like people are designing one, so let's get that going. All right. Okay, so they're saying the plus is like a 1/1. They either Death Touch or Flying for a bit of evasion, maybe the former if it's like a Spy Thought or something. Defiant Mars says, I think I like the one that can copy abilities based on research the most so far. Okay. The one that comes in with research doesn't copy ability. Oh, I guess it does. It can copy target creature. Okay, so this one. Okay, so they're saying, like, create a 1/1 with maybe some evasion as the plus. And as a minus, get a research counter. Something like that. Blue does get copy permanent, replication technique. Yeah, I thought it probably did, but I didn't go to the trouble to sort it out. It's definitely not super common. So I'd say the instances that there are of blue copying any permanent may be a bit of a bend. So I don't want to like necessarily use those to justify this, but it's definitely something blue can do. So it itself wouldn't necessarily mean that we couldn't have our Planeswalker become a copy of any permanent. Okay, so then this would be like a minus however many. Maybe the ult could be draw X cards and each opponent loses X life. Draw X cards and each opponent loses X life, where X is your research counters. If that's an appropriate way to word it. Yeah, this does kind of feel like a Tezzeret as well. Which is not to say we can't do it, but just something to be aware of. He likes doing a lot of stuff with artifacts, and then sometimes like turning those artifacts into creatures, and then often like drawing cards based on the number of artifacts you have. So it's like not a carbon copy by any means, but has some similar functions. It currently doesn't do anything with artifacts, although our 1/1 in the set is an artifact token, so unless we have a specific thought for it, that is what it would end up being. But you're right, it is kind of maybe not as similar as I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, we could just have it be like... I mean, we could have the plus ability be you get a research counter. And then that limits you to 1 per turn. And you're still getting research every turn, but it would be a bit more limited. Yeah, it could just make it 1 or more. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get a research counter. We could only give 1 research at a time and maybe give it 2 starting loyalty. Yeah, the cost also doesn't have to be 3. We can change that. That's just a holdover from the last version of the card that this was. So. Blue, black, black, +2 make a 1/1 with menace, -2 until the beginning of your next turn. Get a research counter whenever 1 or more creatures deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker. -7, draw a card for each research counter you have. 3. I think 3 could work fine with what we have personally. Shadow Wolf is, though, proposing a mono-black version, which I'm not opposed to. Because we do already have... Oh, no. The other one we have is black. So we don't currently have a blue one. It's maybe not the end of the world if we don't have every color represented, but... -2... is this ability. It's effectively the same thing. Then -7 Try research. Oh, blue, black, black. I'm not sure why I read it as 2 black, black, but I sure did. So that's my bad. Apologies. We already have the mono black one in the case file. Yes, we do. It is an uncommon. So the one that the cloned creatures on emblem, I was thinking you could also have in the passive, whenever you gain a research counter, put a loyalty on this, and then its first ability be 0, 0, target player mills 2. If a creature is milled this way, gain a research counter, then same ult. Okay. Yeah, we can change that up. Let's see. I think having all of that might be a bit too much to give it another passive and an active that both give it research counters. We could have it just be like +1, you get a research counter. I still like the life loss with the ult, just give it a combination of blue and black abilities. Well, it's not actually going to be 2 mana. So, like, we could make it, 5 or 4 or 6 or, whatever is appropriate. So, just being too good as a whole, that can be fixed. It's just a question of whether the design is good. It doesn't have to destroy target creature either. That was just an ability that I tacked on. Too easy to get research. Okay, so you are opposed to the idea of plus wanting to get research at all, even if it's on like an expensive walker. I feel like research would need to be on a minus. That is even more limiting, that's true. No, just a cheap one. Okay, cool. So yeah, if there's ever a card that just that has no generic mana, is just colored mana, that probably means that I haven't costed it yet, and I just put those in so that we know what colors the card is. So, and just in general, even if there is a generic mana there, we can always change that amount. So don't ever. I mean, obviously, you can say if you think it's too powerful after we've already costed it. Talked about that. You could say, we want it. It should cost more. But yeah, we just hadn't gotten there yet. So cool. Okay. Well, here's the thing. We may not have a specific version of this card nailed down yet. But we have ideas, and we could go with some version of this one, or some version of this one, or some version of this one. So why don't we vote on which general concept we want, and then we can either work on making that a better concept now, or we can work on upgrading it later on our own time. So, let's list the choices. We have what do we call this one? Shade. The shade version, the one that turns into a shade. That steals abilities. We have the Ashiok version. I don't think I heard anyone really liking this version, so I may not even put it on the vote unless somebody feels differently. We have the research clone version. We have the one that you guys just threw together. That's like makes a creature and then it gives you research based on when they hit. I guess research on hit. Something like that. In general, I think that walkers should be able to defend themselves. I agree. However, I think a lot of people don't... They see that too narrowly. They think that defending themselves means you either have to kill a creature or make a token. And I think that there's more ways to do it than that. For example, giving a static ability that is a downside if they hit the Planeswalker. That's still a form of protection, even if it's a softer protection. So, for example, this one. Let's call this one... It's like an illusory ambusher. Just, how about draw when hit? There we go. Do we have any other versions? That was one I was working on, didn't end up finishing. This is just a different version of this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. I agree with that in theory, but gets abilities is not strong enough. Sure. I mean, it's not just gets abilities. It gets the name, which can allow you to draw cards if you destroy the creature. Obviously, that may be too hard to actually do with the current numbers, but numbers can always be tweaked. So I think that that argument is maybe a little disingenuous, especially because it does say destroy target creature on it. So Shadow Wolf says my vote is for draw when hit. Okay. Cyber 5 likes the research on hit the most. It feels the most cohesive. Okay. I still personally like my first version of this one the most, so I'm going to vote for that. I'm not a huge fan of a shadow person having a thing happens when they get hit effect. I did, for that reason, consider having them take less damage when hit. Shadow Wolf says research on hits. Sorry. Draw it. Research on hit, draw on hit. Oh, you're saying that ability would be for that one. Got it. I feel like they should have a ghostly prison. Ghostly prison would work. It's probably. I guess propaganda is kind of an old card, so I don't know if it counts as precedent anymore. So I'm not sure if that effect is still in blue or if it's just white now. Where's the first one again? First one is the one that we're looking at right now. The Shade, the one that when hit gains abilities and then turns into a creature. I think it might not be precedent, potentially. I think I would not count propaganda as precedent. However, I would have to see if there's other blue cards that do the same thing today, and I'm not sure. I know that there was a recent white one. Aside from Ghostly Prison, of course, there was one uncommon legend from Dominaria who had a similar effect. So, while it would definitely make some sense, I'm not sure if it's still in blue. I like the gameplay niche of the clone since it kind of made me think of blue-black Saheeli. I think the on-hit one could work, but I feel like it's missing something that defines the Planeswalker. Can't be attacked is white-green now, apparently. Interesting. Or primary white and then, like, secondary green. Gameplay niche of the clone. I think the on-hit one could work. Feels like it's missed something. Okay, so you want the research clone? The research clone, the one where the ult that says all of your stuff becomes clones. Also, Shadow Clones is a neat design space. That's true. That is a very, very cool flavorfully. Maybe the Planeswalker could become a creature that has some bonus effect when it deals damage to a player. Like drawing a card or something similar. Yeah, we could definitely do that. They haven't done too terribly much with Planeswalkers becoming creatures. Obviously, there's Gideon, but he's mostly just like invincible. He doesn't like have effects on hit. And then there was Sarkin, could turn into a dragon, but he was mostly just flying evasion, so he doesn't actually get into too many battles because it's kind of hard to block him. And I guess there's now Grandmaster of Flowers, turns into like a 7/7 dragon. I don't really know that one very well though. The new Arlen too. Oh, I haven't actually seen. I haven't looked at the new Innistrad stuff, but I definitely need to because I love Innistrad. Okay, so Defiant Mars likes this one. Okay, the research clone. Okay. So Ninjugo, are you voting for the research clone then, or the like Shadow Clones one as well then? You don't necessarily like the research counters thing. Okay. Well, would you like to vote, or should we just have you abstain? Because I'd like to finish up this vote pretty soon, so we can start working on some other stuff. Plus and minus, yes. Now remember, we're voting on the general version of the card. We can change the specifics later. And the plus and minus are the parts of the card that are least intrinsic to it. So if you think that needs work, well, that's good because personally I agree with you, and that's the part that's more likely to change. Missing quotation marks from the end of the ult. Thank you. All right. Cool. Well, at this point, we have 1 vote for each. So that vote has been super helpful. I like the design of the research one, but the plus and the minus feel a little stale. I agree with you. Trust me. Okay. It sounds like this is our winner because even though it only has 1 vote, okay. Oh, right. Multiloquent, you voted before everyone else, so I missed that one. That's my bad. So now it does have the most votes and the most people saying that it's like their secondary option. So we can work with this one. Well, this one. All right. Cool. We'll cut all those. And I'll give them their own file. All right. Cool. Well, in that case, yes, we have an ult. We've gotten a lot of work done on this Planeswalker because nobody seems to like that, or maybe even that. Gotta go. Good luck. All right. Well, thank you for stopping by, Shadow Wolf. Have an excellent day, and we hope to see you again. First off, except it's a shade. All right, I'm going to get some more water. You guys can brainstorm this if you would like. Or start planning ideas for whatever else you want to design. All right, how about hand attack? Shadow stuff does hand attack. That's, yeah, some shades definitely will make you discard when they hit you. You also need to include in addition to its other types. It's one option, yes. Mechmoose points out we don't have to do that. Those types can be replaced. So, I don't know. Does anybody have a preference on whether it's in addition to its other types or not? It's true, if you were to create clones from like a tribal deck, you know, you're facing against a tribal deck, the tribal abilities from your clones will not work as well if they do not have the creature types. Eloquent also votes for instead of. Okay. Seems like that's how people are feeling, so we can just leave it that way. But if you have a shade clone of a creature, it still has to look like the creature type it's copying, right? So yeah, you're talking from a flavor perspective. I agree with you, Cyberfi. Like, I could go either way on it. I don't... I could see it working either way. I don't know that it's a huge deal. Which could also go both ways. Like... I was just thinking it would make the wording really long. In addition to its other types. Yeah, that's... Currently, that's adding a line. If the other abilities space it out enough, it may not actually end up adding a line. But yeah. Okay, so what other abilities do we want then? Do we want the research ability? Do we want it to have anything to do with research at all? Flavorfully, it would make some sense, but it also doesn't have to if we want this to be a very standalone Planeswalker. Okay, I guess we could try it without anything research related and just see what we could build with the ultimate. Oops. Since that is our main ability. I just know cards like Abomination of Llanowar can come in with 0 toughness if they come into play as just a shade, so that would be rather janky at times. It sure would. So, as I agree, if you want to make it as not janky as possible, you do want to have it be in addition to. I don't think it should use research as loyalty. I prefer one ability matters at most. One ability matters. Good call, Cyber5. Like, one ability cares about research. Okay. Maybe a plus that has a bonus if you hit a research threshold. Well, black is big research, right? That is correct. That is why I thought it would be fitting to have a Planeswalker whose loyalty is your research, because you just want that as high as possible. But we do not have to do that. That was just one idea. Let's try it without. Let's see what happens when we just build around this ability. I mean, it's hard to just build around the ult, because, of course, this doesn't have to be, like, -10. I mean, it's pretty good, so it should probably be pretty high, but it's kind of hard to build around the ult because you aren't usually going to get to the ult. You'll usually just need to cash in your Planeswalker for some helpful abilities now. But we could have stuff that still synergizes with the ult. So that if you do get there, your other abilities have still, like, comboed with it. Sort of like we did for Hal, who I really love as a design. It's +1, can kill a small creature, or it also puts a devoid counter on a creature, and then its next two abilities both care about colorless creatures. So even if you don't get to the ultimate, like, it still is very cohesive. So we could focus on something like that here. All right, about to drive for a couple hours, so you guys get to keep me company. Okay, well, hello, Gunblade. Maybe a minus could be a minus X with X's research. Plus X, you lose triple X life? That's an interesting idea. I mean, I see you're being sarcastic, but still. Okay, so like minus 2 or whatever. I didn't see that red walker. That's pretty straightforward, but also pretty unique and cool. Yes, I'm a big fan. I like most of the walkers we've designed, but man, that one might be my favorite. It's very cool. Hello, Star Haste. Welcome back. Yeah, we are working on finishing up our last Planeswalker. It's taken a while. So, oops. Sorry, I knocked my mic over. But we've finally come up with at least a design. We are building around this ultimate. So, basic idea is you get an emblem where anytime a creature enters a non-token enters the battlefield, you get a copy of it. Except it's a black shade. So it's just going to start cloning everything. The plus could be a draw you reveal and maybe get a research counter if the card has certain qualities. That would be interesting. So like if it's a non-human creature card. Nijugo, I understand you do not like the name. However, the name is probably the least important part of the card. So we can deal with that when we have finished up with everything else. We have so much else going on this card, and it's taken us so long to get there. I would really like to focus on the more important aspects. How about instead of -X, you bounce creatures. That way when they get recast, if you have the emblem, you get clones. That is a good idea. I get that you are helping with the rest of the card as well, but it was a passing comment that you've made multiple times. So I'm just trying to point out that it's not the thing that we need to be focusing on right now. Okay, so it bounces a creature, which is blue. It makes clones of things, which is blue, although it turns them into black shades. Yes, Mech Moose, that's just where I was going. So something more black for the plus ability. Yeah, what would be a black ability that would combo well with these? Drain life? Something to do with cards in graveyards? Yeah. Cards in graveyards could be interesting. I guess if it's a plus, though, that really limits the options. We could do it like this. Return target creature card from the battlefield or a graveyard to its owner's hand. I guess it would have to be target creature from the battlefield or creature card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. And that way it's blue or black. That's, I mean, getting very complex. That's, but still, could be interesting. Maybe the owner milling cards equal to the creature's mana value. That would be interesting. Oh, talking about adding a black aspect to the bounce effect. Hey, that's where I went as well. Sorry, sometimes I am designing and I don't see chat just like jump up a bunch. Each opponent loses 1 life for each creature that entered the battlefield this turn. That's a cool idea. Although it won't do anything really the turn that it comes in. Something to be aware of. All right. You may sacrifice a creature. If you do, draw a card and gain a research. Okay. Or... it's a bit of blink synergy with it. Yeah. Does this make sense flavorfully? Draw a card and lose 3 life. Can target opponents as a bolt. Doesn't exactly synergize with the rest of the card, though. Yeah, it probably does. I think that our current abilities are wordy enough that we don't want to have 4 abilities. So it does definitely need to have everything move up. Okay, so Mekmu said draw a card and lose 3 life. So you'd be like targeting a player. Something like that. It's true it doesn't synergize as much. It is interesting. It's like bolting the opponent every turn. So if they can't kill it, they're just going to die real quick. Need a space in the top box? I think it's fine. A weird play would have the possibility to be a downside but give a large amount of loyalty. The ultimate is the main thing you want. Interesting. So would it like start real low? It hadn't added the colon, it's fixed now. Okay, good. Good to hear. So like we could have it start real low and like be a +3 or something. Or if that's too low, just because you wouldn't even be able to activate this. But that's only 3 turns to get the ultimate, which is real good. I think the -2 also needs creature card in a graveyard. Oh, in a graveyard. Thank you. And then, of course, this would no longer be a like upside ability. It would be like you lose 3 life. Or discard a card. Something sort of downsidey. What do we think? Do we like that? Lots of loyalty for a downside effect? Or smaller loyalty for an actually useful effect? Okay, Cyber 5 votes for the latter, which is a smaller, more useful effect. I'd like it to at least survive its -2 once on cast, however. Okay. It's reasonable. If it doesn't, that's a pretty bad card. But it does make this, like, need to be definitely a bit worse. Starhaze says the downside's more interesting. Let's see. I mean, exiling some cards from your library would limit the number of times that you can plus this guy. So as is, you would have to plus it 3 times and then minus it once to get the ultimate. So 4 turns, that seems reasonable. Especially if you've played a 5-drop that is doing nothing but exiling your library. It is interesting, though interesting doesn't always equal fun to play. That's true. It's a good point. I think it was just something we haven't seen before, but other walkers have +2, which have benefits rather than downsides, so it might not be great. I mean, we could always make this more expensive if we want to give it like an upside +2 or something. This card would get creatures into the graveyard for the -2. That is true. Although at that point, you've just done sort of nothing. But, I mean, it's definitely, it does work. Maybe mill 4, then exile a card from your graveyard. That way it has graveyard synergies. Interesting. Mill 4 cards. And exile a card from your graveyard. Or it could be... This is like... And I don't know if it would be a +2, because this is like a full upside mechanic. But it is relatively small. It's sort of making one of your creatures unblockable. And it does work once you have the ult, because you just have more creatures to give unblockable to. Although once you have like a ridiculous number of creatures, you don't really need to give, I guess, menace or unblockable. Either way could work here. I don't know. But it does feel a bit more like a shadow, a shade, hard to block. I think there's still a text box below the 3rd ability. Don't think so. I feel like a lot of opponents would just let you use the plus to harm yourself and then just use a Planeswalker kill spell before you can ult it, essentially making you go negative in value by yourself. That needs to be deleted. I've deleted it. There's nothing there. I feel like if we're giving it a negative plus ability, it should have a smaller plus ability that gives a positive effect too, just to give options. That's reasonable. I'm just trying to figure out what would be the perfect plus ability, whether it's negative or not. We'd still sort of want it to be like in line. +2's clipping into the type line. Oh, I mean, that's probably just a function of the fact that that's one line where the other abilities are 3 and 4. We can fix it manually later. Yeah, Cyber 5, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. In Constructed, it would possibly happen a lot. That you would be plussing it and getting, hurting yourself, and then your opponent just kills it before you get to ult. In Limited, that's not going to be as big of an issue because there's a lot less ability to just straight up kill Planeswalkers in Limited. But we should still design for both. Yeah, I mean, I also agree. If it has a negative ability, we want to make sure that it still works with the rest of the card and isn't completely useless. But milling, you would be able to get something back from your graveyard, so that does work well. Could give the next spell you cast Flash. Throw in blockers to protect it or instant speed a sorcery removal spell, and Flash is big in blue-black. That's reasonable. You'd have to, the next spell you cast. Yeah, you might still have to limit when you could play it, until your next turn. The next spell you cast has Flash. But that would work. In the context of archetypes, what kind of deck would you be building with this? Well, blue-black is the big research deck. The idea being get as much research as possible. This is not really doing that, which is fine. But then we don't necessarily need to build that way. Planeswalker removal at common is a lot more common now. Yep, AFR has Grim Bounty, as well as the burn spells. Both Faraday's Fireball and Dragon's Fire can both hit them. So, good point there. Let's see. +1 discard a card. Create a 1/1 black shade and ult at -7, perhaps. That's not bad. If you just say the next spell, it's not like it would stack, so it shouldn't matter, right? It shouldn't matter unless you're 3 turns down the road and you haven't cast anything, and then you have to still remember that your thing has Flash. Now, the likelihood of that happening is low, but, think of the thousands of games that people would... I mean, no, there's really probably not going to be thousands of games played with this set, but if there were, it would come up. What about giving this Planeswalker Flash itself, too? It's an interesting idea. It's not ridiculously helpful since you can't activate it on the opponent's turn. It does kind of protect itself for a turn. Or at least, at the very least, what it does is you give up... So instead of playing it on your current turn, you hold up the mana so that you can play it on your opponent's turn. So you're not going to be able to activate it that turn when you would have been able to. Plus side being that you can, tap 5 mana, or however much this costs, play it on their end step, untap, and play a new creature to protect it. So you're effectively giving up on one activation of the card for being able to hold up mana to keep it safe. So that's probably relevant upside. What about a passive? Instead of entering with research, get a loyalty each time you gain research. Interesting idea. Yeah. You definitely, in that case, you would have to be built around it, but that's interesting. All right, so here's what we do. It's a 1 green creature at rare, and it's got power equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard. Then it has toughness equal to that number plus 1. Easy. Feels familiar. Can't believe it's not Tarmogoyf. Yeah, but in our case files, we introduce a new card type. Oh, I've got your new card type. Oh boy, oh boy. I didn't mean it. Functions kind of similar to War Uncommon Planeswalkers, but you have to work for its ult. Yeah, and of course, since it would be a bit harder to get loyalty, we can decrease this. We could increase this. Whatever. 3 CMC for this current design. Like that? Yeah, I mean, if you have to build around it with research counters to get loyalty, I don't think it needs to be very expensive, because you're already giving it enough restrictions. We had like 4 mana, get a research to this. I don't like the idea of a walker not being able to work on its own. Should have a meager +1 just so it can do something if you don't draw other research cards. Or at least a 0. Sure, we could give it a 4th ability. There we go. Then this would be the -2. And then a token +1. Zero, get a research. I don't know if that's in any way helpful. How about, like, you mill 2 cards? Or, I mean, we could just bite the bullet and have it surveil, even though the other walker surveils as well. Surveilling makes some sense for this guy flavor-wise. We could even change the other one to not surveil. Oh, Pithing Needle's back in Standard, huh? With I haven't looked at the Innistrad spoilers yet, so make it just surveil 1, in my opinion. Fair enough. I mean, especially if it's 3 mana Planeswalker. Although at this point, giving it a plus ability, it becomes a 4 mana walker, really, at least. Now I'm thinking about it, that +1 and -2 is making it pretty similar to the Golgari Planeswalker. It sure is, isn't it? Okay, so Cyber 5 is saying we can make a 0. Cyber 5, on that note, if we did want to do that, we wouldn't have to say you may discard a card. We would just say discard a card if you do get a research counter, because it's already a you may to activate the ability, so just don't activate it if you don't want to do it. But it's reasonable. I mean, It would be a conditional plus. It'd be like you have to discard a card to get... I mean, you get both a research counter and a plus. All right. I think I've hit my breaking point. I think I'm done with this Planeswalker for now. We can talk about it and its similarities to the Golgari Planeswalker at another time, and we can resolve that. But for now, I would really like to do something else. I think it's overall, we've got some decent abilities, and we could probably just call it a day on this if we wanted this to actually be our final product. Obviously, people have been suggesting some other stuff, and I'm definitely open to that, but just right now, I think I want to move on to something else. You would also get free research if you had no cards in hand. Cyber5, you not necessarily. If you still worded it as discard a card, if you do, you get a research. Then you're still not getting a research for free if your hand is empty. Although you could word it just as discard a card, then you get a research counter. If you wanted it to be free, effectively, if you're hellbent. All right, Sorcerers is suggesting a reanimation build around at uncommon or rare. I like it. So a creature that wants to be reanimated, is that what you're saying, Sorcerers? I agree with you there. And honestly, if my set doesn't have reanimation, I'm not happy. So, do we want a rare that wants to be reanimated? Or just like more reanimation effects? Do we have a common graveyard to battlefield card? I don't believe so. Ah, crap. This bothers me every time. Oh, that's not even going to be in this set file. Whatever. Let's see. Surveil, your research, blah, 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 blah. I think this is what we have. Surveil 2, then return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. I don't think we have a actual reanimation spell at common. Oh, I guess this is the closest thing. So I had an idea for a white card. An O-ring you can sacrifice to draw a card. Works as a flicker effect if you need it to. That's an interesting idea. Also, I demand one of the uncommons be Narcomoeba in the case file. That makes sense to me. That's. I was going to say that it still wouldn't count as like pre-printing it, right, for the future shifted sheet, but they did that in Guilds of Ravnica, so we're good. Cyber5 says, I know I was also thinking of a rare tutor for research decks too, something like this. Demonic Observation. 1 in a black instant. Search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to the number of research counters you have. Reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. Oh boy. Shoot, at that point, you might be able to just be able to put it in your hand. Just having to have... I mean, I guess if the card that you want is like 0 value and you're doing degenerate things, maybe that would get broken, so putting it on top would be a bit more safe. Okay, so for Research Tutor. I have a commander deck in which I do tutor for another tutor with some regularity. And it makes perfect sense. Because I'll get like a demonic tutor. But it's a deck that's all about building a combo, so I use that demonic tutor to tutor for Diabolic Revelation, which lets me tutor for as many cards as I can pay for. Sorry. You get a research counter, then search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to the number of research counters you have, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. Makes sense? I was using Mausoleum Secrets as a base, and that only lets you get black cards, so it was mostly a precaution. That's reasonable. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Demonic Tutor is quite strong. So the base is like... I guess they had Grim Tutor at Mythic in M21, probably. So that's a 3-mana sorcery that tutors for anything to hand, and you lose 3 life. Difference being here, obviously, especially in Limited, you want to tutor for the biggest thing that you can find, because the more big stuff you have, the more likely you are to win. So, that said, it's still probably going to be decent. Sorcerer says, I think it can go to hand and be a sorcery. I think maybe it could. Base tutor for any card unconditionally is 2 black sorcery at uncommon. Yes, that's true. I was just trying to think of if they had done it at a more powerful rate, and they did, but it was at Mythic. But it was at Mythic because they wanted to sell packs because it was a valuable card. So the question of, like, would they do it at Rare is probably... But it's not something that they do consistently at Rare, so... So if we did, it would be you get a research counter, then search your library for a card with mana value less than or equal to the number of research counters you have. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Paying 3 life is a lot easier than having 4 or 5 research as well. That is true. But we could take this up to 3 mana if we feel that is necessary. What do you guys think? Seems reasonable. I guess, honestly, I think it's fine. It may have the potential to be too strong, but I would be willing to try it at 2 mana. Cyber 5 says 3 mana. All right. Either or is good for a mana value. Okay, I'll just put in the notes. Test at 2 and 3. 2 or 3 mana. I think it works. It can't be used early game to find a win con because of the research limitations. You'll be casting it on turn 4 or 5. That's a good point. Thoughts on some sort of 2 mana policeman illusion called Narc Amoeba? Well, I would be careful. Because snitches get stitches, Mr. Narc Amoeba. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good design. All right, and then Mechmoose suggested an O-ring in white that you can sacrifice to draw a card. That feels like an uncommon. Actually, there aren't rules here. When card name ETB, exile target non-land permanent until this card leaves the battlefield. Sacrifice card name, draw a card. Wow. Snitches Get Stitches could be the name of a card in this set. Yeah, you're right. It sure could. Okay, so this is an enchantment. So O-Ring itself is 2 white. So giving it extra utility, does that take it up a full mana, do we think? Obviously that utility is not huge, because if you sacrifice it to draw a card, they get their thing back. But, say somebody board wipes. Sacrifice it, draw a card, they get their thing back, and it instantly dies. Tap target permanent. If its controller has 5 or more research counters, destroy it instead. I know, for a basic O-Ring effect, maybe one that also has ward could be nice too. That's interesting. I haven't really thought of putting ward on like a utility enchantment. But yeah, I don't see why not. There's enchantments with Shroud and with Hexproof. All right, so what color is Snitches Get Stitches? You can tap something or destroy it. That's got to be white, right? Like Dispatch. Yeah. The flavor feels a bit more like black. Also, this O-Ring sack should only be at sorcery speed, right? Well, if we want it to be fair, probably. Nope, only if it has the original O-Ring wording for the gross combo. I think Snitches Get Stitches might be too on the nose. I don't know. I feel like they would make this card activate only as a sorcery. But I personally would want the utility of being able to activate it as an instant. And does that push the card too far? I don't think so. I think this is fine. Making it an artifact makes some sense. Since white-blue is kind of caring about artifacts, so when possible, we should probably default to that, if it makes some sense. We'll just say Ectoflux Vessel. Yeah, it makes some sense. It's pretty cool. It does make it a bit more vulnerable to removal. As is, that means, you know, with if it does get removed, you can sacrifice it to draw a card. So it actually does kind of serve as protection, which is interesting. I think this card is fine, as is. I mean, it's a good card, but I think it's probably still pretty balanced. Sweet. Okay, and then we still haven't done... Sorcerers was suggesting a reanimation payoff. Or a reanimation build around. It's a containment unit made out of what's-her-name's flux, the Ghost. The Ghost? Like the... Oh, the Planeswalker, the white Planeswalker. Gotcha. Yeah, she's not in this set, so I can't go pull her up as easily. Yes. Okay. Makes some sense. Since she's kind of has prison-y powers, I guess. Cool. Search a library for any number of cards named Narcomoeba and put them into your graveyard. Put all creatures in your graveyard onto the battlefield. I don't know about that, Megmoose. All right. ... Snitches get Stitches version 2. 2 and a red. It deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of research counters its controller has. That's pretty funny. Good design too. In that red it should be hating on research since it does not get it. I will at least put it in the case in the file. Oops. 2 red, there we go. Deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of research counters. Its controller. That permanence controller has. Might be how they'd word it. Lots more Narcomoeba stuff. Put research counters, creatures from your grave into play. Big black research reanimate payoff. Oh yeah, Tutor. We should definitely do some weird stuff with hybrid in the case files. Could maybe deal something like 2 plus X damage, just so it can still do something. That makes some sense. Let's see, 2 plus. I always forget how Welding Sparks words it. X is 3. There we go. Deals X damage, where X is 3 plus the number of something like that. Okay, I think it would probably want to be more like research when you cast from graveyard or reanimate. Okay. So something like this is what you're suggesting. Hold up, wasn't white getting graveyard theme in this set? We could put a basic reanimate in white instead. That makes sense. It did just get late for dinner in MH2, so it's in the color pie. Yep, always good. They don't tend to do 4 mana reanimation at common in standard. Sorry, in premier sets. So if we want it at uncommon, 4 mana is probably fine. If we want to put it at common, so it's more, well, common, so you can do it more often, we'd need to probably make it 5, but could maybe give it an upside. Yes, if it's at common. I think we might want to do it at common. If we want to make the theme more prevalent. And then something neat that's uncommon. All right. We don't want at least one uncommon with the Surveil running around. I agree with that. Okay. What can we cut to add that? Oof. I've got an idea. Oops. Hold on. Reanimate payoff feels like an uncommon to me. Maybe a Gravedigger-like creature with a 3 or less restriction at common. That would be cool. I was thinking like when ETB... And that may be too easy to abuse if it's a permanent that has an ETB, so it might just make more sense as an instant or sorcery, but it is still like artifacty. So it doesn't reduce our artifact slots at common and white. But yeah, as Cyber 5 is suggesting, we could just make it reanimate small things or Gravedig. You could treat it like a white enemy dead, where if it leaves, the creature dies. Interesting. We'd have to have it still connected to the creature somehow. So that it would know which like specific creature to kill when it dies. I don't know. Do you guys like the idea of a just flat out white reanimate or like a small white reanimate on a body or something? Let's see. Fine with either kind of reanimation. Alright, for now, let's just make this a sorcery. And if we need another white common artifact, we can look into it. Although, I think we do actually kind of have another one, because we got the cycle of 5 common artifacts, so it's a little bit better. I think when we originally designed this, we didn't have that yet. Just have it be an equipment with no equip cost, and it kills the creature when it becomes unattached. Oh. Makes sense. Was the white-black theme reanimation directly again, or was it something else? We've had it as one of the research ones, I believe. Yeah, exploit. There we go. Exploit with some research going on. Like aristocraty. So, that kind of fits. White-red was more the graveyard, yes. I'm so sorry. Yes. What was I saying? Yeah, maybe reanimating small stuff would make sense. We do want reanimation, so we went to put it into black, and the logic there was, well, why put it into black? White-red is the graveyard colors, so maybe we just put it in both white and black, and you can just do what you want with it. I think I did already put in the red card that is an act of treason, except it grabs a creature from a graveyard. All right, Najugo, have an excellent day. Thanks for hanging out. Maybe a white unearth card could be cool. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now we're suggesting this one. It would no longer be called Utility Bell, but whatever. Would become a rare. So just all this pulled off and put onto like this. Okay, so then that's 4 mana reanimation at rare. That's pretty fragile because it's vulnerable to both creature removal or to equipment or to artifact removal. So we could give it additional upside, or we could make it cheaper, or we could just say 4 mana is probably fine for a reanimation spell. All right, and then have the low cost reanimate on a stick at common. Sure, let's just turn this into a sorcery like we did before. Late for Dinner was a common at 4 mana with upside. Even if it's a premier set, the rare can probably be 3. It has downsides like being an artifact, as you said. Okay. Equipped creature has indestructible. Oh boy. Could also maybe make it cost 1 white and have it also gain you 3 life. Oh, okay. You're talking about that. I thought you were talking about this one. I was like, what? 2 mana? Okay, yeah, I hear you. Okay, so 4 mana here, and then equipped creature has indestructible, and that means that you can kill the creature, but you actually have to kill the artifact that's keeping it alive. I like that suggestion a lot, Multiloquent. All right, and then Cyber5 was saying for this guy. We decided we needed to have a spell that says target player gains 5 life, right? The reason being, we have this one, which is if a player would gain life, that player loses that much life instead, and the bear, whenever you gain 3 or more life, put a +1/+1 counter. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be 5. It needs to be at least 3 in order to trigger both of our cards that care about that. So I like just tacking 3 life gain onto it. That makes sense to me. Although there is like 4 life gain tacked onto this, but that's probably fine. I guess it would be weird if this just said target player gains 3 life afterward. So maybe this will only work with the bear. All right. Multiloquent suggests something like True Silver Exoskeleton for the Reanimate artifact. Let me... Oh, are you just saying like as the name? Oh, should be 1 or 2 mana for this. Yeah, maybe, oops, 2. Yes, that would work. Oh, Mortal Coil. I'm sorry, but Mortal Coil is just good on 2 levels. Ah, thank you. Okay. Excellent. Okay, great. So now we've got 2 reanimation spells at in white, which is good. We still have 1 in black, which is Null Revival. We have 1 at Mythic, which is a Planeswalker, the black-green one. And kind of 1 in red. All right. Looking good. Yeah. I believe Immortal Coil's like a rare black artifact from one of the Alaras. I was right. It's all about exiling cards from your graveyard to draw cards. And to prevent life damage. But you lose if you have no cards in your graveyard, so that's good. It is quality jank. It's very interesting. I've never played with it, but maybe I should like make a cube and put that in there. Probably would place it in your top 100 favorite cards. Man, I have so many favorite cards. I don't know where I would start. All right. So I think... Oh. I was about to say, I think we've gotten through everybody's ideas, but I see there's a good one coming up here. It's called Hungry Hungry Hippo. Enter the battlefield, make a food token. It's a 6